dive right in, as we do have some good things to share with you guys today. So hopefully you will unmute and talk. And if you aren't too shy to turn your camera and you have good connectivity, I'd love to see your faces because I am a people person. And that is one thing I really miss, seeing people. But I understand your privacy. So either way, I'm good with it. But what do we think of when we think of place value? Anybody want to unmute and tell me, or put in the chat? What's like the first thing that pops into your head?
I guess the first thing that pops into my head is like just the ones, tens, hundreds, thousands type stuff. And then the place value blocks.
Oh yeah. Hey, you are so good, because that's some of the exact things that I have on my slide in just a second. I was going to say, is it anything like that hundreds, tens, ones chart? Or maybe you might have a poster like that somewhere in your school. You know, I saw a few of those around. There's those base 10 blocks that have been around probably forever in your school, because they are made of some indestructible material that was probably bought in like the 1980s, and they're still there. And maybe tasks that look like this in that number, circle the digit that's in the hundreds place, might be a task that we ask. Okay. And the question, what place is the 7 in? Okay. So those might be some things that come to mind when we think of place value. Other than from a teacher point of view, it also might be, my students just don't get place value. So we might have that kind of feeling too. So this type of place value that we see on this slide is the conventional way place value is taught or assessed, and it focuses a lot on the position of the digit. And we also refer to it as positional place value. And the instruction in this type of convention is aimed at mainly preparing students to work with standard written algorithms, because they especially like a chart like this, because that kind of forces that digit in its place. Okay. However, many students just manipulating these digits really doesn't support their understanding of quantity and their understanding of the place value and in the number system, rather than just digits. So this session is going to focus on the development of conceptual place value rather than just positional place value. And we want conceptual place value to be developed first as that foundational piece, so that students will understand the positional later. Okay. And I'm referring to chapter 5 from Developing Number Knowledge. And it tells us that being able to flexibly increment and decrement by tens and ones, and later also by hundreds, is critical knowledge for the development of facile mental computation. And this book refers to this critical knowledge as conceptual place value. Okay. Since I don't know everyone that's in this session, and I don't know your backgrounds exactly, I will say that for those of you that may be trained in AVMR, because our interventionists within our state are may be trained in AVMR, or if you're trained as a math recovery teacher, or if you are a primary +2 teacher that has been trained by KCM, you have some knowledge of the SEAL, which is a student's arithmetical knowledge and that learning progression. Okay. So in order for students to be able to be ready to grasp conceptual place value, we want them to have an understanding of a numerical composite. Okay. So that tells us that they're ready to think about 10 things as one thing. And so that's kind of foundational. If students are completely unitary in their thinking and count by ones, they're not really ready for thinking about 10 things as one thing. So when they make that transition to being able to see numbers in chunks, then you know that we're ready to think about 10 things as one thing. And so how do we start them on that journey in building conceptual place value? Another background piece that we develop within our courses is the 3 aspects of number. So if you've been to some of our courses, I'm sure you're familiar with this graphic, which is the verbal, the quantitative, and the symbolic aspects of number, which are 3 ways that we want students to be aware of number, and we can assess them separately, but we develop them together. And some of the activities that can help us to develop these things, which if you've been to some of our courses, these things might be familiar with you. But to develop the verbal aspect of number, we can do things like count arounds, talking about the number that comes before and the number that comes after. If we're talking about place value, it might be the number that's 10 more, the number that's 10 less, 100 more, 100 less. Okay? Those types of things can be things that focus on just that verbal count, which is a foundational piece to understanding place value. Okay. And the symbolic things that we can use to develop their awareness of the symbols that lay that foundation for building conceptual place value are things like number cards, numeral rows, number lines, number charts like the hundreds chart, and arrow cards, which we will take a look at in a moment. But the piece that sometimes gets overlooked is the quantitative piece, and we want students to be building quantities with different materials to develop that conceptual place value. We want them using things that they can compose and decompose numbers, like bundles and sticks or unifix cubes or bead racks, anything that they can put things apart, together and take them back apart. So we want to make sure that students can develop that concept of 10 things becomes one thing. And then those groups of 10 become another thing. And that unitizing. Okay. Any questions or comments or challenges that you've seen in helping kids develop these different aspects of number as it relates to place value? Y'all are quiet. Okay. All right. Well, one of our settings that we have, Casey, hopefully you're familiar with our site where we have our virtual resources. And one of those that we have is arrow cards. And I think we have probably mentioned this in one of our prior sessions, but we have virtual arrow cards, which also have a component that ties it to materials. So if you are having to work in a virtual setting currently, which I know in my part of the state, the schools that surround me are virtual right now. This is a resource that you could use to tie the symbol and the verbal along with the quantitative together. So, and thank you, Dee, for putting that in the chat. I appreciate that. And I think it will ask you to make a copy. And you know, I don't even have this one pulled up, but I will take just a minute to do that. I'm going to stop my share because I have to switch screens. I'm so sorry. It'll take just a moment, and you can open up that from the chat if you would like as well. And while I'm pulling that up, I will let you know that I'll give a shout out to Tonda, who has made a nice little video that goes along with this. And we don't have time to watch her whole video right now, but if you want to learn more about how to use these as a teaching resource, she has a really nice video that goes right along with that and does a really good job explaining learning progressions and relating arrow cards to conceptual place value. Does a great job with that.
So my first link I put in takes you to the whole page where all of those virtual settings live. And then the second link is directly to the one Lisa's getting ready to talk to us about.
Okay. As soon as my computer makes the copy, we'll download it. And it's running a little slow, of course. Probably because everybody's trying to get on it at the same time.
Yeah, I specifically did not try to open it on purpose, hoping it wasn't going to fail. So.
There we go. Now you should be able to see my, there we go. Should be able to see my browser right now. I can get my mouse on that screen. There we are. Nice. Okay, and this is a Jamboard. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will just show you a few of the slides because we have some great examples and some great tips on how to use these. But arrow cards help you build numbers using the little arrow. We just line them up on top of each other to build numbers. There we are. There's the example screen. For example, if you want to build 58, you take the 50 card and then the 8 card and line those up with the arrows on top of each other. And this screen shows us a student that has made 58 using the base 10 materials, 10 frames, and then loose counters to build the 8. And so we have quantity along with symbol. And of course, if you're talking about that, then you've tied in the verbal as well. Our Jamboard, I'm going to slide on over, maybe, to another material that we have. And this is a way to show 86. And this is another quantitative piece we have where you can use a 10 by 10 grid to use that to show the quantity and the structure of that. And we also have included with our arrow cards a visual representation of bundles and sticks. So here's an example of making 54 with bundles and sticks. And this screen also shows that we have screened the other arrow cards to the side so that it's not distracting to students. So that shows you something else that you can do with this Jamboard. Okay. But the whole idea behind these arrow cards and the place value materials along with it is that students can build their understanding of number, not just of digits, but also of quantity. So we want them working with numbers, not just in symbolic form, but also in a quantitative form. So hopefully that makes sense. Has anybody had a chance to use this Jamboard with students? Not yet. Well, hopefully if you are having to teach virtually, hopefully you will find that helpful and useful. But I'm going to shut that down. But the idea is that we are using not just in a virtual sense, but also if you're having to use this with your students, this concept in person or even virtually, you may want to provide them with materials so that they can use themselves. So if you've got, for example, I've got some bundles and sticks laying right here. So if you send things like this home with your students, then you can have them to do it at their tables as well, or in front of their computer, whatever your situation is currently. So hopefully you'll find that helpful and useful. Okay. But I just want to reiterate, in building conceptual place value, that students need to be able to compose and decompose numbers with materials. So I just pulled some pictures of, actually I found some of these in classrooms throughout Kentucky, some of these pictures that I've taken of bundles and sticks and bead racks and Unifix cubes that are in the stacks of 10 that look similar to place value materials. One of the advantages is that they can come apart. So we can decompose and then put them back together. This teacher had a really nice way of organizing where she had her 10s and then she had clipped a little basket to the side for her loose ones. I thought that was a nice idea for organization of our materials as well. But I know in today's world, you may have to have sets of things just for Each student may have to have their own. So that's something to think about too, as you're structuring the materials that you have for your students. Okay, so as we're working with our materials, we want our students to be able to, as I said before, increment and decrement. And so there is kind of a little bit of a progression that you can follow that will help them to build on prior knowledge. So at first, the first thing we want to do is increment by tens and beginning on decade. Okay, so if we start at 20, what is 10 more? What is another 10? Okay. And incrementing, and whatever we do forward, we also do backward. So if we're incrementing, we also want to decrement. Okay. And then once we are proficient at doing that on decade, then we're going to switch to incrementing and decrementing off decade, but still by tens. So we're going to start in a place that is not on a decade. For example, we might start at 34. What is 10 more than 34, or 10 less? After we can do that counting on and off decade by tens, then we can increment and decrement by tens or by ones, beginning on or off decade. Okay. Notice that this is either counting by tens or by ones. So for example, we might say 34, 44, 54. Now what would 2 more than that be? So 56. And then what's 10 more than that? 66. And so that type of switching from tens or ones. And then the next step would be incrementing and decrementing by tens and ones, so that they can do tens and ones together. Okay, so hopefully that progression kind of makes some sense. And we have some virtual activities that we have put on our site that can help you. And you can play these if you, they are available on the KMPI to download as an actual activity that you would have in your classroom. And some of you may have these in your classroom, but they're also available as a virtual activity that you can play with your students. So we're going to just try to play this game as a demonstration of how this would work. Okay. And as you can see, there's our instruction page. I can use base 10 materials to help me add and subtract 1 and 2 digit numbers in the range of 1 to 100. So in this game, each player should use a slide game board. So they're going to have a game board, a virtual game board that has spinners and covers. And each student should have some type of base 10 materials available for them to use wherever their location is. So you may have sent home bundles and sticks. They may have 10 frame cards or 100 bead rack or 100 bead string. And these are links that will send you to 10 frame cards or 100 bead rack if they need virtual manipulatives for that. So we're going to, I'll have to stop my share once again, and we're going to just look at what this game looks like. Okay. Okay. So you should be able to see my screen, which has our Jamboard on it. And it has a directions page. So on your turn, you will spin one or both of the spinners, you decide, then find the sum or difference as indicated, and you would tell your partner the solution and explain your strategy. Then you can cover that number on your game board with a counter. Okay? And you may use manipulatives, as we mentioned. And the first player to cover 3 numbers in a line wins. The line could be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. Okay? And there are different game boards, B through F, but they do follow a progression. So you do need to play them kind of in that order wherever your beginning point is. They do get more difficult based on that progression that we mentioned just a moment ago. But we'll just take a look at this first one, 3 in a line. And let's see. Do I have a volunteer that would like to play? Would like to play me? Because I can give somebody control of the screen and we can play as a demo.
Cindy, you want to try to get back at her?
Did I beat you at something, Cindy? Okay, Julie, are you gonna play me?
I'll play you.
Play me.
Since
Yeah.
Cindy's afraid of you.
I guess that's it.
Yeah. I don't want to take on Lisa. You go for it, Julie.
Oh, that is too funny, y'all. So I'm gonna give, I could give anybody, if this is another thing that you can do with your students, if they're not working from a Chromebook, you can give them remote control. I'm gonna give Julie remote control, and so she can move and I can move. And you delete this image. I'm just gonna push delete and it removes the cover and now it reveals the spinners. So Julie, would you like to go first?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Oh, I can't move it. Now I can.
Yeah, you're moving it. Okay,
Are you
so-
moving it?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Okay. I thought you were moving it.
No, not me. That's you.
Okay. It was just delayed.
Yes.
I'm delayed a little bit.
Okay, so you covered 50 because
Because I've spun a 70 and I have to take 20 away.
so now I can either decide to delete both of these spinners or just one of them. Okay, so I think I'm going to just keep the 70 and delete this bottom one. And so now I have 70 plus 10, which would be 80. So I'm going to put mine here. Kind of, it blocks Julie a little bit.
I'm going to delete this one again.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to delete that. God. I can't see it. There. Okay. Oh, I got 70 again. Did it not delete?
I don't know. Let me do it for you.
Okay, you do it.
There you go.
Okay. Oh shoot. Can I decide to delete the other one?
Too late now.
Okay. Oh, that's good for me.
Yeah, it does help you.
Sorry. All
Okay.
right.
And so you covered 70 because
Because 60 plus 10 is 70.
I'm going to delete both. And it's 70 minus 10, which is also 60. And
Can you win diagonal?
you can win diagonal. I don't know why that keeps happening to you, but
It's not on purpose. I guess like that. Okay. I just beat you.
you did. So you have 3 in a row, so you win. Awesome.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I needed that today.
Okay, so that one, as you noticed, was on decade, and we are incrementing by tens. Okay, so if we look on down to B, starts off decade and increment and decrements by tens, and I think the rest of these do as well. So we're starting at different places. Each game board has a different set of starting numbers. Okay, and you could make a copy. You guys are probably familiar with how to make a copy of the board, but just in case, you can just make a copy of that board if you want to, and have your students do just that one or whatever is appropriate for your group. And that is the first level. We also have this in level 2, which plays in a very similar way. It's just that the progression is a little different and the spinners are a little different. This is going to be dice rather than spinners. So the way this one works is you delete the cover and then it gives you 2 number cards. So, and then at that point, you can either decide to delete both the cards or one or the other in the same manner. And it does list from the teacher point of view, if you want to know what the numbers are that are on the dice, we have those listed on that game board slide as well. So we have those 2 games available, and man, I'm looking at our time. Our time is like almost up. So, but we have those 2 things available on our virtual site. And we have one other that I wanted to make you guys aware of as well. And that is one that was just posted, I think, as our session began, which is the jump game. So thank you, Cindy, for getting that posted so quickly. In the jump game, there are 6 boards, and each board asks students to make jumps on the empty number line to reach a target number. And the allowable jump sizes are indicated on the board. So jumps can be drawn using the draw tool or the half circle shape on the board. So for example, here's our first screen, and the directions at the top say move from 0 to the target number in hops of 1, 10, or 100. So if we start at 39, or we start at 0, how could we get to 39? How might you do it, or how might a student do it?
Start with some hops of 10.
Okay, so let's see. My mouse is not there. It is. It disappears on me. So I'll show you guys what I mean by the half circle. If you go to shapes, this little half circle, I found that it does really well for making those jumps. So there's a hop of 10. And then if I want to duplicate it.
I like that. I hadn't thought of that. That's very cool.
So how many hops of 10 do you want, Cindy?
I want one more.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That gets me to 40. Then I just need to take one little bitty step back.
Okay. And so you could make a smaller arc, or you could just, and I'll show you the pen as well. Just take the pen and make your mark back. And I put it in a different color just for indications. And so how many jumps did it take? How many hops did she take to get to 39? 5. And so that's what we would indicate here. And you could do that with a text box or with the pen. If your kids have a touch pad, if they're using an iPad or something, that's kind of easy to write on the screen that way. So either way. And I'm just going to slide through some of, let you see. Each one of these is different. This one gives them the starting and ending points. And it starts at 0, but then we start in other places on that game. This game is backward because remember, whatever we do forward, we also want to do backward. So they're moving from 100, then moving back. And if we're moving that way on the number line, we would want to start on the right and then move to the left and count those hopping backward. This one is, we just have little post-it notes that we have put here, but you could change these and make them what you want by clicking on those. And then there are some where we have the starting point and ending point and the hops that you are allowed. And another example that you can use is time. So starting at, for example, 1:30 and then hopping to 4:45. And that elapsed time, how much time has passed. That's just another use for the jump game. And we have, we've even used this with fractions on a number line, although it's not developing place value, but it is really cool way to use the jump game. But as I'm going to slide back through these, in order for students to be able to make these hops of ones, tens, or hundreds, they have to have an awareness of the place value. So this can really help you understand what kids know about those numbers and help them develop that awareness. Of place value. So more than just the position of the number, but really what is our number system and how does it work? And that's what we want our kids to be aware of.